What's up? I'm Bailey. I took a video of how I set up an enclosure for an invert from a plastic or an acrylic container. This is specifically for my therapist, Stirmi. Her previous enclosure got cracked because one of my cats laid on the top, and I just did not like how it looked, so I decided to set up a new house. I apologize for the voiceover and no audio, but I had music on, and that's the big illegal on YouTube, so I had to silence the whole thing and do this beautiful ultra 4K super HD recording over the video with my laptop's microphone. In the future, my recordings and voiceovers are going to be a lot better, so I apologize for this being the most amateur video ever created since the dawn of time. Anyways, this enclosure is a shoe box or a clothing box from the Container Store. It's about 14 by 12 by 5 inches. You usually want a deeper container for a burrowing species, but this girl in particular does not like to burrow. I will set her up a little burrowed spot so she has somewhere to hide as soon as I put her in the enclosure, and she will not change it at all. She will keep it exactly as it is. All my other tarantulas will completely renovate the entire enclosure. It does not matter what I do. They move everything, all of the plants, the rocks, the dirt. But this girl, she don't care. She takes it as is. So I don't have to worry about a deep container because she's not going to be making intricate tunnels at all. The first step in how I set up these containers is tape off all the areas that I'm going to put holes in with the solder tool, just to minimize the melty, burnt, nasty plastic from being all over the viewing area. And it also just helps if my hand slides or anything where it messes up the tape before it messes up the plastic. I do a full covering of 3 rows on both sides for cross ventilation, and on the front and back I just do a little section in the center for airflow, and then you'll see later on I put a few holes in each corner of the top. This is probably more ventilation than I need, but I'd rather have to spray the tank down to keep the humidity up more often than have it stay too humid and too wet for too long and cause issues, which is not that big of a concern for me anyways, as I keep live cleanup crews and put isopod springtails in all my tanks for my inverts and my reptiles so that they stay the best they can, and the most realistic that they can. The holes on this tank aren't perfect by any means. As you can see on this row, it's very crooked and it starts off tight and then it spreads out. It's not that big of a deal. They just need to do the job. This girl's only about 2.5 inches, and in the next year or so she'll be in a new house. So this is not her permanent home. If it were, I would take much more time in putting the holes in so that it was absolutely perfect. Here's my beautiful measuring system, using my hands and eyeballing it, because whatever, just put some holes in there. After I put all these holes in, I'm going to pull the tape off, which was super easy and not at all a pain because it totally didn't get melted to the holes and get stuck. And after that, I take a razor blade and I cut all the excess plastic from all the edges. I also sand, actually. Kind of forgot about that. But here I am sanding the holes. Totally extra step, probably don't need to do it. You could honestly put these holes in the tank without tape, without sanding it, without cutting it with a razor blade, and it would be good to go. I'm just doing it because I think it looks cleaner, and that's how I wanted it to be. It took me probably about 2 hours to get this tank set up from start to finish. But I sand all this, takes probably 50% of the trash plastic off. Then I'll pull the tape off, and then I take the razor blade and I go around on the inside and the outside and I cut off all the excess little rings, which do end up looking like forbidden SpaghettiOs. I did not bite them though, unfortunately, so I can't account for how delicious they probably feel in your mouth. Here's a beautiful shot of peeling this tape off. I've probably spent freaking 30 minutes doing this. and made a giant pile of trash. It was great. Totally not at all a waste of time. I'm using an absolutely terrible razor blade. I decided to snap it so it's better and sharper. So watch my complete disregard for where it shoots off into my office. And I just keep going. Because whatever. And if you watch right here, boom. I go ahead and try to use my thumb to wipe a piece of plastic off the blade. After about 10 minutes, the blood got way too annoying, and I decided I should probably get a Band-Aid and take care of how I stabbed myself. Way good. I follow all the safety regulations. See that? Look at that. There's a Band-Aid. 10 out of 10. It keeps it safe. I keeps it real. It's totally not dangerous for me to use a sharp object. Here is what it looks like, just taking the razor blade and cutting all of the little circles off for those previously mentioned forbidden SpaghettiOs. Look at how delicious those look. Wow, amazing. Here is the old enclosure with a molt and everything, and it's just a disaster. I pull all the stuff out with my tweezers and get as much out as I can before I move her out into a little holding unit so that I can get the dirt and everything taken apart and set up for the new home. If you look at the top, you'll see her little white feet walk in. It's kind of hard to see. She kicked a ton of hairs off. She hates being bothered. She will kick all of her hair off if I bother her, which is exactly what she did today. But then I get her out. I try to do it as relatively calmly as I can to try not to stress her out too much, because she's already pissed that I'm bothering her in the first place. But when I got her, she was about the size of my thumbnail, and now she could take up my whole palm. So here I am. I'm taking all of the rocks and moss and wood out of the tank, and then I'm going to break up all of the dirt clumps. I usually use all fresh cocoa fiber when I set up an enclosure, but as this enclosure was only set up for a couple months before it got broken, I reuse all of this dirt, and I put it as a base layer in the new tank, because why waste the dirt if it's not bad yet? In my own experience, what I think works the best for me and for my enclosures is I put down a base layer of dirt and I compact it pretty much as I can, and then I soak that dirt in water, and I think that helps keep the humidity at a constant and relative rate, and it also keeps a lot of the swampiness for the high humidity tanks below the regular just kind of moist substrate, and that way my spider doesn't have to be sitting in sopping wet mud all the time, but still has the humidity that they require and need. So I just spray a ton of water and soak this whole section and get it all good to go. Here is how I'm setting up the cork bark and moss and everything and getting that little burrow made for her. I am setting this tank up exactly the same as the other tank was, besides the fact that it's a square instead of a rectangle. And I'm just keeping it simple, make it look as good as it needs to, but have it set up for her in a way she likes, that's familiar. I have a 55-gallon vivarium that is full of all different kinds of isopods and springtails and other roaches and plants. It's probably 95% powder orange isopods, which is what I'm putting in here, with a little bit of the soil that has the springtails, and they will make their own population and grow in this tank. I also throw a few crickets in for food. Usually you shouldn't put food in if it's just going to be sitting in there, but she recently molted, so I don't have to worry about the crickets bothering her, and she'll probably take all 3 of these and eat them within the next few days. Here's the final setup, pretty much exactly the same as it was before. And here she is, nice and pissed off, but absolutely stunning. And I'm going to go ahead and put her in her new enclosure, and she's going to settle in immediately right off the bat, because it, as far as she's concerned, is exactly the same as it was before. Thank you for watching the video. Leave a comment if you have any questions or want to ask about anything. I have 7 tarantulas, I have scorpions, roaches, all sorts of animals, and I'm always down to answer questions and help out people trying to get in the hobby or who are just curious about it, because it's good to learn about these things instead of be afraid of them. Thank you.